Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Controversial Issues with Rabbi Chaim Coffman from the Holy Land. Welcome back. Don't smoke crack, Rabbi. It's good to see you again. How are you?
Always a pleasure. It's been, been a few weeks here.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir, indeed. Good to have you back, for sure. I've had a lot of things come up besides the Chagim, and then I had to go out of town on a business trip and stuff. So, should be getting back to normal. I am going to be traveling more often as we go along because the video shoot that we did for this Texas Bankers Association school was a huge success, and now they want to do it at other states. So, I'm not really sure what the schedule will be, but it's going to put me in a situation where I'm going to try to get some things. Problem is with the Monday show is that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are their school days, and they're 8-hour days, so I can't do anything during a Monday. I could possibly pull something off on a Sunday, providing I have the right, teachers available. Like Singer would be available, of course, and Skobac and Shulman, but it'd be a little tricky, but I'm going to try to figure it out, so we'll see. All right, so here we go.
Listen, you do what you got to do.
Yes, sir.
We try and make everybody happy. We tick a lot of people off, and that's what we do over here.
Yeah, so we're going to really try that today, apparently. This is probably, in my existing opinion, probably one of the most controversial issues that I've ever even heard discussed, because it's really, it automatically insinuates so many things, and so I'm hoping we can clear some of that up and just have everybody with a good, healthy view of what Tanakh teaches. So
let's hope we do it in one shot. I mean,
okay.
We'll see what.
Sure.
We'll see where it goes. Can't imagine it'd be more than one shot, but
right.
You never know how quick I get all the information out, and
sure.
Just run with it.
Sure. Hey, Rabbi, just to let you know, your camera is shifting again. It's tilting up too high. It's almost cutting off. It's cutting off your chin.
Moved. Okay.
Yeah, I think when you.
I'll have to keep I'll keep an eye on it.
Good man. Okay, we'll take it away and let you have it.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be here. This topic, it is definitely a hot topic about women. Are women, subservient to men? To what extent? If it's true, how does it apply? How does it apply to Jews? How does it apply to non-Jews, right? Or does it, really apply to non-Jews? So we've spoken a number of times, about women's issues, about feminism, within Judaism, a big misnomer that, certainly within Judaism, we have gone, beyond, the letter of the law, protecting women's rights, certainly by the ketubah, by the marriage document. What do we have? We have that an obligation for the husband to support the wife, right? He has to, give her a house, even if he doesn't own it, right? He's got to rent, he's got to put a roof over her head, he's got to give her clothing, he's got to give her conjugal rights. And as the Talmud says, we'll quote, the Talmud a little bit here. Talmud says you have to love your wife. A husband has to love his wife, right? That's the way it works, men and women together, right? Not any other combination. But a man has to love his wife more than he loves himself. Now, there's a major problem with that statement. And the problem is nobody loves anybody more than themselves. It'd be one thing to say, you love your spouse as much as yourself, right? You'll give as much as you can. You'll help as much as you can that you would do for yourself. Right, but to say I'm going to go beyond that, I'm going to go beyond and, do things that I wouldn't do for myself, right? The Mishnah in Sanhedrin tells us that, Bishvili nivra olam. For me, the world was created. So how would we learn? For me, not anybody else, right? But obviously we have to fit in this world. We have to live in this world, right? We have to deal with other people, right? But we ourselves, everybody, we are created in the image of God. By being created in the image of God, we are our own world, right? So we got a major responsibility as Jews, certainly as non-Jews. So, as you said before, this is a hot topic, probably, very hot topic because of the way people view it. So, if we would say, well, women are downtrodden, they're subservient, etc., and, we treat them, like chattel, and we don't treat them properly and all that, okay, they have a claim, right? But if you put a 21st century spin, on what goes on, then, that's not true, right? The Torah makes clear, first of all, that a man has to cleave to his wife, right? He's going to leave his father's house. And it says in book of Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, cling to his wife, they shall be one flesh. Right? So at least from there, that woman is created from man, right? As it says a little bit before. And God brought the woman to him, and he said, this time it's bones of my bones, flesh of my flesh, calls a woman, right? Verse 23, chapter 2, verse 23. Then says verse 24 that a man is going to leave his father and mother, right? He's going to cling to his wife. Now, there's no way here, that it says in any way, shape, or form, that she is subservient to him, right? Now we're going to see by the curse, right, a little further in chapter 3, we're going to see what happened when Adam and Eve ate from the tree, and man is punished, right? Man is punished. The snake is punished, right? The snake is going to have to, it says in verse 15, chapter 3, verse 14, God says to the serpent, because you've done this, accursed are you beyond the cattle, beyond all beasts of the field. Upon your belly you shall go. He's going to eat dust the rest of his life. That's his curse. Legs get cut off, as the Talmud tells us. He's going to eat dirt the rest of his life, etc. And even though he's got food the rest of his life, he has no connection to God, right? Because the question is, okay, if the snake gets punished, what's the punishment over here? It says you're going to eat all the days of your life. You're going to eat dust all the days of your life. He's always got food. So if he's always got food, where's the curse? The curse is he never needs God, right? He never needs anything. He's got everything, and at the palm of his hand, palm of his feet, whatever, right? Or his slithering weight, doesn't have feet. In any case, the snake gets cursed, right? Woman gets cursed, right? Or before we get to the woman, man gets cursed, right? Afterwards, right? It says because you listen to your wife, you ate from the tree, right? What's going to happen? And in verse 18, chapter 3, verse 18, it says, thorns and thistles shall it sprout for you. You shall eat the herb of the field, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Verse 19, by the sweat of your brow. Right, we're going to come back to this. By the sweat of your brow, you're going to eat bread until you return to the ground. Right? Parnasa. Livelihood's going to be hard. Right? Everything was given to you up until this point. You ate from the tree. You listened to your wife. Right? So what happens? So now you're going to have to work hard. Right? To bring in money, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to work by the sweat of your brow. That's the curse of man. Now, what's the curse of woman? And again, we're going to quote the Torah here. Verse 9, chapter 3, verse 9. What does the Torah tell me? Torah tells me, to the woman he said, I will greatly increase your suffering in your childbearing. In pain shall you bear children. First curse is she's going to have trouble. She's going to have difficulty. She's going to have pain, right? A tremendous amount of pain in having children, going through pregnancy and all that, right? But there's another aspect of that curse. The other aspect is of raising children, right? We understand anyone who has children that, it's not easy. It's certainly not easy raising children in this generation. Not easy really in any generation. Every generation, has their evil inclination, whatever it is. But the further away we go away from Mount Sinai, right? So the less level we're on, right? We're on a lower level by more generations that go past Mount Sinai. So it's hard, right? Raising children. We have plenty of self-help books today, right? Certainly these are a lot of books that sell that for all kinds of things, right? One of them, child rearing, right? It's kind of a lost cause, or was a lost cause. You would think you would think, why do we need these books for? Right? Why would we need parenting books? Forget Jews, non-Jews, anybody. Why would we need parenting books today? Right? Very simple. Something's been lost. Right? Because normally that was passed down from mother to daughter. Right? From, father to son. They would understand, right, how to parent because the parents are the example. Right? Rabbi Kiva Tatz tells a story. He was very close. Very close to Rav Simcha Wasserman, a blessed memory. Simcha Wasserman, the son of Rebbe Chanan, Hashem Yikam Damo, God should avenge his blood. That he was the head of the yeshiva in Baranovich, famous student of the Chofetz Chaim, right, more than 100 years ago. And he had a son. Rav Simcha Wasserman, started a number of yeshivas in the States. Rabbi Tatz is I think a cousin to him. One of his relatives, very close to him. And he asked him the following question. He said, how can it be? He said, how can it be that, you, Rabbi Wasserman, are a big expert in child rearing, right? People, call you from all over the world. People ask advice, about how to handle kids and what to do and all that. How can you be such a world expert in child rearing if you never had kids? Right? I should have prefaced that. Rabbi Wasserman never had kids. Rabbi Simcha Wasserman never had kids. So, his students were really his children, but he never had biological children. So Rabbi Tatz asked him the question. He says, how can you be such an expert, and you never had kids? So Rabbi Wasserman answered very simple. He said, everything I know about child rearing, where did I learn it? I learned it from my parents, right? That's where it should have been learned, right? In other words, the good things, maybe the bad things also, we learn from our parents. So if that has been lost and that was not passed down, how to properly educate, so to speak, that's something that we have to relearn. That's why there are tremendous amounts, of self-help books out there, right? For one very simple reason, these things have been lost, right? There's been a major gap, between parents and children. I remember many, many years ago, before, I had little kids, at the time, and I was by somebody, and this woman, speaking to her daughter, teenage daughter, right? So I had, 5 teenage daughters, so very apropos for this story. But, my kids were much younger then, and this daughter talks back to the mother, right, in a nasty way. So I asked the mother, I said, being a little bit obnoxious that I could be, I said, you're not going to do anything? You're not going to say anything over here? So God, don't worry about it. That's how teenagers are. Now, teenagers, a friend of mine would say, they're a creation in and of themselves. Anyone who's had teenagers, they know, right? And I've had, I had one kid that was a teenager from the age of about 7, right? So, I got definitely my share, right? But education is a hard thing, right? It's a very hard thing. And for some people, if they never got, proper, how a proper family works, because, we live in a messed up world, and there are a lot of messed up families, no question about it. But, nonetheless, that's where parenting should be learned from. So someone will say, well, I learned all the bad things, right? All the negative things in parenting. So some people had to learn from scratch what it means to be a parent, how to educate a child, according to the Torah, right? For a Jew or for a non-Jew, we'll speak further, right? We'll speak further about this. But the reason that someone, let's say they grew up in a messed up house or without Torah values, you have to learn Torah values in order to know how to educate your kids. Now, it doesn't mean we're always going to be successful. A person can't punish out of anger, right? Whatever, a lot of things. I don't want to really get into parenting, right? That's not really the topic. But we are the yardstick that our kids are going to see. They're going to measure, so to speak, because they're in the house most of the time, right? Even though they're getting their education outside, they're in school for many hours, right? But the most education they're getting is from the home, right? So what they see in the house, if it's, God forbid, it's a messed up house, right? And the parents aren't doing their job properly. They're going to have to learn proper parenting from somewhere, right? If they didn't get it at home, they're going to have to get it from somewhere, right? So parenting, is extremely tricky in this generation for a number of reasons. Maybe, we'll speak about that another time, right? But, I want to, point out that obviously there's an obligation how parents are supposed to treat their kids. And there's an obligation for how kids are supposed to treat their parents, right? Even by non-Jews, right? Even if we say that by the Torah, one of the 10 commandments is to honor your parents, right? Honor, fear your parents, right? By non-Jew, that may not be the case, that they may not have to stand up when a parent walks in the room. There might be some things that don't necessarily apply, but they still have an obligation. They should not, talk back to them, should not necessarily contradict them, maybe more of a moral imperative, but seeing how, secular kids are. My Rebbe tells a story when his mother, first came to Israel to visit, and I guess they were on a bus and they heard a child, whatever, teenager, young child, whatever it was, and they heard this child say, probably an adolescent, right? They heard this adolescent say, Abba Shali Chamor. My father's a donkey, right? Well, I mean, it's probably a little more slang than that, but they were horrified. How could, his mother was absolutely horrified. How could a child ever call their parent that? Where's the education? You'll say, well, maybe the parent deserves it. Doesn't matter. For a child to say that about a parent, is absolutely horrifying, right? But again, maybe for a non-Jew, it's more of a moral imperative, certain things, but they also have to show respect. You can't certainly, you certainly can't degrade them, certainly not in public, certainly not in private. It doesn't really matter what they do, right? You have to have some level of respect because they brought you in the world. But let's see the next part here about women, because I don't want to get off topic here. So the first thing is women are how to get onto that, because the Torah says, chapter 3, verse 16, to woman he said, I'm going to increase your suffering in childbearing, right? You're going to have difficulty. You're going to have difficulty in childbearing. And, in pain, you shall bear children. So that's obvious, right? It's very hard, very painful, women to give birth. At the same time, we understand it's not just about childbearing, right? That's one aspect, right? Another aspect is raising children, right? A lot of the raising children really, stems from the mother. Doesn't mean the father doesn't have a part, right? We're going to, discuss this, I guess, a little bit, the role of the man and the woman, but I want to get to the other part of the verse here. And this is where people start throwing tomatoes at the screen. And that's not my fault because he picked the topic. And the Torah says in the same verse, right, in verse 16 at the end, it says, yet your craving shall be for your husband. Again, I'm just quoting. I'm not adding anything here, not interpreting, right? The Torah says, yet your craving shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Right? Let's repeat that. He shall rule over you. So that's a good place to start, right? The topic was, well, is a woman really subservient to her husband, right? The Torah over here says, because of the curse, she's going to crave her husband and he's going to rule over you, right? Now, obviously, it doesn't mean, and it can't mean, that a husband has a right to do whatever he wants to his wife, right? That's certainly not the case. We mentioned that a husband has to love his wife more than himself. Now that's a very lofty task over here. It's a very hard thing to do, right? As we mentioned, nobody loves anyone more than themselves, right? Take a baby. What does the baby do? Baby screams, they want to eat, they want to be changed. They control the parents. Well, more or less, they control the mother, right? Because a woman, can't really stand the fact that, the kid screams, right? And you have to understand what type of scream it is. For the husband, he'll just roll over, go back to sleep. It doesn't bother him, right? But for her, the pain of the child, even if it's not really pain, either the child's hungry, needs to be changed, burped, whatever, whatever the issue is. Right? So now, part of the curse, now I'm going to have to explain, part of the curse is that he shall rule over you. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of biology, and I guess more, I would say more psychology, right? And that is that, as the Torah says, that a man's going to leave his house. We saw it before. Man's going to leave his house. He's going to cling to his wife, right? But that also means a woman is going to cleave to her husband. Now, normally what happens is, at least in the Orthodox world, when a girl gets married, she doesn't go so far from home, right? She doesn't venture that far. Wants to be, somewhat close to home. But obviously there have to be boundaries, right? So, I told each of my son-in-laws right before, right before, they got married, I said, once my daughter walks down the aisle, once she, encircles you under the canopy, under the chuppah, I said, she's all yours. Any problems? They're yours. I said, if I have to get involved, I will. Right? I'm not saying you can't ask advice, different things, whatever, but normally in a healthy relationship, right, between a husband and wife, parents don't have a say, right? Sometimes it's hard for parents to see what goes on, right, in general, but, they're adults, they're getting married, they have to deal with what they have to deal with. So that, so that being said, first time I sat in the rabbinical court, my Rebbe, there was a very, very nasty divorce case. Took up most of the afternoon. They brought in someone who, has dealt with the family, a psychologist, etc. They threw all the people out, and they interviewed this, psychologist, whatever. And they asked him, all different questions about what's going on in the marriage and different things. And one of the things they asked him was, is it possible for this marriage to be saved? And he said, this marriage can be saved. There's only one problem. There's only one problem. So he said, what's the problem? The problem is that the parents on both sides are sticking their nose in where it doesn't belong. If they wouldn't stick their nose where it doesn't belong, I could save the marriage. Right? So that can happen. Right? You can have parents, unfortunately, overstep their boundaries. And when they overstep their boundaries, they interfere. When they interfere, it's me against them, right? And it causes problems, causes friction, right? So, a parent has to realize once their child gets married, okay, you give advice a little bit here, there. But the best thing is you don't say anything, unless you're asked, right? You have to give a certain level of distance, because they have to work things out for themselves. If they come and say, listen, we have this question, how do we deal with this? Whatever, that's one thing, right? But, as we always say, you should not give unsolicited advice. You don't give advice where it's not warranted, right? So many years ago, people told me before any of my kids got married, they said there are two things you have to know, right? The first thing is your pocket always has to be open, i.e., you got to have money to give them for whatever, different things. And the second thing is you have to learn how to keep your mouth shut. So I said, that's great. I said, I get two strikes against me. I said, one is I don't have that much money. And the second thing is I got a big mouth, right? But, I learned, I took that to heart, and, they want advice. They can ask advice. They don't ask advice, not my business to get involved, right? So a woman, so what's the whole point over here? Because the Torah says, yet your craving shall be for your husband, right? A woman is going to cling to her husband, right? She wants her husband to be successful. She doesn't want to hear criticism about what her husband does. She's all in, right? She's there to build him up. She's there to be what the Torah says as an Ezer Kenegdo, as someone who's going to be a helpmate opposite him, as the Torah says. Now, a helpmate opposite him does not sound like she's subservient. It doesn't sound like she doesn't have a say in anything, right? And that's really going to be the conclusion. I could have said that at the beginning and said, well, that's it. It's been a great show. 2 minutes, we're done, right? But, you got to cut to the chase here, understand a little bit, a little bit of background, right? So a helpmate is not someone who says, yes, sir, no, sir, right? What can I do for you, sir? That's not what a helpmate is, right? A wife knows, the husband's shortcomings more than anybody else does. Why? Because she sees it on a daily basis. Now, obviously, if it's something egregious, they'll speak about it. They have to get help for certain things, etc. But she's there to be a helpmate, not a battle axe, a helpmate. Nobody's perfect. Everyone's got their own thing. They're coming from, different backgrounds or maybe similar backgrounds, but different types of households, and when it comes to money, when it comes to other things, they're viewed in different ways. So in order to merge, in order to mesh those things together, to make a happy family, it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing by any stretch because, even if the backgrounds are similar, right? But, your Shabbos table is going to be different. Not going to be the same necessarily. Some like shorter meals, some like longer meals, some like to sing more, some less, whatever. There are a lot of different dynamics that go on because this person's been in your house for, 20 years, 25 years, however old they are when they get married. So they've also gone through certain things in school, in work, friendships, all kinds of things. So people, when they come into a marriage, I would say, with certain level of baggage, good things, bad things. Nobody comes in perfect. We are, we like to be idealistic, and want certainly want the best and whatever. But, after the firecrackers stop going off and after you settle into real life, it's work, right? It's work. I once spoke at a Shever Bracha. For 7 days after a person gets married, for the first time, they have these festive meals every day. So, different family members host them, friends host them, etc. So someone I was close to, invited me to one of their kids, not only to the wedding, but the Shever Brachas, and they asked me to speak. So I was speaking in front of all these, ultra-Orthodox Jews, really Yerushalmis, Jerusalem Jews, nice round hats, long coats, and here I am, out of America, whatever. So the person asked me to speak, right? So anyway, I got up to speak, and one of the things I mentioned was, when it comes to marriage, marriage is like a plant, right? Why is it like a plant? It's like a plant because if you don't water it, it dies, right? Now you can try this Botany 101 or 101A, right? You take a plant, you put it in the sun, right? You don't water it, it will wilt. Right? Not only it wilt, it'll die. Right? It's something, doesn't matter how long you've been married for. Right? If it's not something constantly you're working on, then that spark sort of goes away. It just gets, it gets beaten down. So when we say a Ezer Kenegdo, a helpmate, that does not sound like she is subservient, right? That's one this whole thing is a real big misnomer. Right? But if that, again, we're going according to what the Torah tells me. So if the Torah tells me she's a helpmate, that does not mean that she's saying yes to everything. Even if you're doing the wrong thing, even the spouse is doing the wrong thing, she's there to help him, right? We have to remember, when a person gets married, right, the male is going to give his wife a ring, right? Or something that's at least worth more than the value of a pruta, maybe 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents. He has to give her something of value, right? He's going to say the magical formula. You are consecrated to me, according to the law of Moses. In Israel, you have two witnesses that are going to see him put the ring on the finger, etc. So there's no question why. Why does the husband have to be the one to give the ring? So it's interesting. One very simple reason is that a man and a woman are half souls, right? Why do I say half souls? Because when they unite together, they're considered one whole soul. So it says that the husband, the guy, has to go out and find that other half. Well, doesn't a woman have to find the other half? She also has to find the other half, right? But it's more indicative of the man, right? As the Torah tells us, the man, quote unquote, is the one who goes out, he fights, conquers, other things. Women don't. Now, does that mean, women, by definition, should be 100% passive and have no say in anything. No, it doesn't mean that, right? A husband, as we said in the marriage document, has certain obligations, right? One of them being conjugal relations. And if his wife says no, she's tired, this, that, he can't force himself, right? That is forbidden, right? He has to show respect, has to control himself, whatever, right? But she absolutely has rights. And if God forbid they get divorced, he's got to take care of her, right? He definitely has to take care of her. It's the first time in history that there's such a thing as women's rights, right? So then there's a question, someone will say, hey, women don't inherit, right? It's only the boys, or then if there are no boys, then you go up to the uncle and whatever, right? There's got to be somebody who's going to be able to inherit, to be able to inherit the husband, and if it goes to everybody and no one else is alive, okay, then the woman can inherit. You're going to say, why? Why would we do that? Sounds so sexist. She's going to be the last one to inherit. But when he dies, he takes care of her. How does he take care of her? Through the ksuba, right? Through the marriage document. He has an obligation. That's what he signs on, right? He's got an obligation to take care of his wife. So she doesn't need to be taken care of. So whatever inheritance, okay, the kids will get it. Whoever's going to get it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter the hierarchy in the order. People say, oh, it's terrible, sexist, it's all these things. Forget about it. She's already going to inherit. She gets the ksuba, right? She gets the marriage document. If she gets the marriage document, where's the sexism? She's protected, right? She 100% over here is protected. So, if we speak biologically, right? Biologically, is a woman, in general, is she aggressive? And the answer is no, right? By nature. Now, does that mean if she's thrown in the corporate world, and she's a CEO of a company, etc., does that take away a little bit or more from her femininity? Most women will probably say yes, right? So they'll say, well, we can work, we can do just, as many things as men can do. There's a reason, right? The Torah here says that your craving shall be for your husband, right? A woman is dependent on her husband, right? She's dependent on him to bring in money. Today's day and age, you need two salaries plus, right? So she more or less has to work as well. But how is she dependent on him? She's dependent on him because he's stronger, right? He can certainly protect her, right? She can't necessarily protect herself. Doesn't mean she can't exercise. Doesn't mean she can't necessarily learn how to use a gun and self-defense and all that, right? But essentially, men are physically stronger. I mean, today that's a little bit blurred because you got all these men now dressed up as women, and destroying all the records in women's sports. Okay, it's a different issue, but these women are really men, right? Essentially. So the reality is that, yeah, men are stronger. Men are definitely stronger. Men conquer. Women, do not conquer. It doesn't mean that they can't necessarily be trained, right? But it's not the same. In most armies that exist in the world, most of the soldiers are men. Oh, it's sexist. There should be women soldiers. I'm not saying there can't be. The vast majority are men. Why? Men are fitter. Men are stronger, right? That's just the reality. This is, biology 101, or 101A. We have to remember also that it says in Proverbs, chapter 12, verse 4, and chapter 31, verse 10, it says that a woman is restored to her former and proper status as the crown of her husband and the pearl of his life. Now, does that sound like she's subservient? But what's the statement? They'll say, oh, it's apologetics, but we'll say it anyway. Behind every great man is a great woman. Right now, it doesn't mean she's necessarily in the forefront. She doesn't have to be in the forefront, right? She can help her husband, etc., by being in the background. The problem is, people say, come on, it's 21st century. She should be out there. She should be doing this. She should be doing that. The reality is she should be more private. There are a lot of problems when a woman's out in the workforce. Anyone who's been out in the workforce as a woman knows. There can definitely be issues. It's not like there's no such thing as sexual harassment, right? It's not like it doesn't exist. Even before I aged myself, even before the movie 9 to 5, right, with Dolly Parton and all that, right? So we know this exists. So what should we say? Women shouldn't work, right? Shouldn't be in the corporate world. Again, a woman has to help her husband make a living today, right? But in general, there are issues, and a woman certainly needs boundaries. You have to keep in mind way back when a man would go out hunting, fishing, taking care of, the external things that need to be taken care of. Where was the woman? Where was the wife? The wife was home. What was she doing home? She was home taking care of her kids. Now you can say, oh, that's sexist. Why should she do it? Let the man be nurtured. Let him be trained. He can be just as feminine. I mean, without hormones, maybe we can train him a little bit, but there's a reality. It's a very simple reality. If you're relying on the income of the husband, right? And way back when it was about hunting and fishing and, and all these things. So if he's out or, way back when, where, they bartered, they were, men were on the road for a long time and then came back, etc. Who in the world is going to take care of the kids? Right? So you say, well, it's not fair for the women. Well, who else is going to take care of them? You can't have it both ways. If the man's out of the house most of the day, right, and he's trying to make a living, someone's going to take care of the kids, right? We're not talking about when the kids are in school, right? They have to get to school, they have to be clothed, they have to be fed, they have to be bathed. Now, I'm not saying the father cannot help out, right? Some men may say, that's a woman's job. There are certain things that women do, certain things that men do. Now, it doesn't have to be written like that in stone. If a woman needs help, then a husband should help. Definitely should help. If he needs to help clean, or if he has to get a cleaning lady, or, whatever, it cannot be beneath him. There's a story, there's a story of somebody that Rav Mordechai Gifter, blessed memory, he was the head of the yeshiva in Telz in Cleveland, one of the Torah giants of the last generation. He heard, that the student his father was beneath him to take out the trash. Right now, this is obviously, I don't know, something in this guy's head that, it's like, I sit and learn, and I'm learning all these things and blah, blah, blah. And, why should I take out the trash? I mean, it sounds a little bit silly, you think about it. I don't know what bug this guy had, whatever it was. But one day, Rav Gifter knocked on the door. He knocks on the door. This guy answers the door. He's like, Rebbe, Rosh Yeshiva, what are you doing here? He said, oh, it's just on my way, and, I just wanted to come in and, just take out your garbage. The guy got the message, right? He absolutely got the message. So if a woman needs help, right? If she needs help, it's an obligation of the husband to say, no, that's your job. This is what you're supposed to do. If she's too tired, she's sick, she's, whatever, right? Person's not going to help. You're going to say, well, this is the role. The role is not, written in stone. There are certain things that are obvious, right? You get these feminists say, why do we have to have the children? Because men can't. That's it. Biology 101A, right? Why do we have to do this? There's a difference in the nature. Women are more soothing. Guys just like, they hear kids screaming, like, shut up! That's what they want to say. Doesn't mean they can't be trained, no. It doesn't mean that, right? But, there are certain things I think are obvious. They're obvious because they're values. And sometimes these values, in today's generation get totally skewed, right? In a major way. So secular society wants to make men really feminine and make women really manly, in different ways, which is the opposite of what should be. But in order for a family structure to work, there needs to be a balance. So a woman, if she's willing to take on a lot so her husband can sit and learn, right, for however long until, she can't take it anymore and it's too hard, that's her right. That's absolutely, not everyone can do that. Not everyone can work, bring in money, take care of the kids. It's hard, right? It's hard. There's no question. I don't think, if a person is sitting and learning, for the first years of his marriage, right? They don't necessarily need so much money at the beginning. And the wife is, 2 kids, 3 kids, she can do it, 4 kids, whatever it is, and he's sitting and learning, that house looks different, right? If it can't be done, it can't be done, right? But in the end, it's not a one-way street. It's not just, well, the husband has the final say. Whatever he says goes. That doesn't make any sense. The way it looks, oh, women can't do this. Women can't, lead prayers, in synagogue. They can't, they can't do things in public. They can't this, they can't that. Plenty of things they can do, right? But but these feminists, they focus on the negative. They want to make women into men, make men a little more feminine, or, right, a lot more feminine, right? Whatever it is. But essentially, they want to skew it over here. So there has, in a family where you have a bunch of kids, so there has to be a balance, and there are times where, a husband may have to help out, certainly may have to help out. If his wife can do everything, great. If there are times, she needs help, pick up this, can you do this, etc. Can you watch the kids while I rest? Say, no, my learning's more important. So the husband's an idiot, right? If he says that, and a woman's tired, she feels like, overburdened, and the husband just sort of knocks her down and says, well, I'm going to do what I want. Who cares what you think? You're not going to have a healthy marriage. You probably won't have a marriage left, right? So, there has to be mutual respect, right? So, a woman has to also understand, when it comes to buying things, when it comes to giving charity, since the husband's the one bringing in the money, usually, right? Even though today it's really, you need 2 salaries, but, they have to have an understanding, if she wants to give a certain amount of money to charity, and it's more than normal, she should check with her husband, and a husband should check with his wife. It goes both ways, even if he's the one bringing in all the money, right? If he's the one bringing in all the money, it's not just what he says. He says, yeah, I want to give X amount, double, triple the amount I normally give to this. And he's got to check with his wife, right? He should also, when he goes out, say where he's going, when he should be back. I'm not saying anything that's rocket science, right? These things should be obvious, but we take things for granted. We go, we come, this, that. We don't necessarily think about it, because we get lulled into, everyday life. But I'll bring you another source, because people say I never quote anything. At least the main source. The Torah here tells me, chapter 21 in the book of Genesis, by Sarah sees what Yishmael is doing, and it says in Genesis chapter 21 verse 9, Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian she had born to Abraham, mocking. Right? Commentaries say it's an idol worship, tried to kill him, different things. So she said to Abraham, drive out the slave woman with her son of that slave woman shall not inherit with my son Isaac. Right? So she tells Abraham in no uncertain terms, get rid of him. Right? Get rid of her, get rid of him. Right? Bad news over here. I don't want them here. Verse 11, right? This is what we want to see. The matter greatly distressed Abraham regarding his son. Right? He was a little bit taken aback with what Sarah said. And, he's the ultimate person of chesed, of acts of loving kindness. How could he throw his wife out? Hagar. How could he throw her out? How could he throw out his son? Still his son. Right? How could he throw him out? So, verse 12. Comes along God himself. No intermediary. God himself says. So God said to Abraham, be not distressed over the youth or your slave woman. Whatever Sarah tells you to do, let me quote it properly. Whatever Sarah tells you, heed her voice. since through Isaac will offspring be considered yours. By the son of the slave woman, verse 13 as well, I will make into a nation, for he is your offspring. So what does the Torah tell me? Abraham's greatly distressed, right? How could Sarah throw them out? God says, what are you worried about? Listen to her, she's right. Right? She's right. Whatever she tells you, heed her voice. Now, what would that tell me? That would tell me Sarah herself also had prophecy. Since she also had prophecy, over here she knew something Abraham didn't. She's on a higher level over here, seemingly, than Abraham. So now, if we're saying that women in general are subservient, so to speak, so what do we do with this? You're going to say, no, that's different. Sarah's different, but look how other women are treated. I don't understand. Right? The righteous women in Egypt saved the Jewish people. Sarah over here, God says, listen to her. We see other cases in history, where women are at the forefront. So, it's all a matter of perspective. We mentioned before the fact that we live in the 21st century. In the 21st century, the values are totally skewed, right? Family values, all values, right? That go against what the Torah says. So that's the first thing we have to understand. So if a husband is supposed to treat his wife better than himself, then by definition, she is not subservient to him. By definition, that can't happen. Now, if a husband abuses his wife mentally, right, treats her like dirt and all that, refuses to lift a finger till she collapses, no one's going to say that's right. Nobody. So there has to be a balance. If there's not a balance, then the marriage will disintegrate, right? Unless the woman agrees and she says, I'm willing to take on everything, right? You don't have to lift a finger. There are some women, out there like that. They don't want their husband to do anything. All they want them to do is sit and learn. So way back when my Rebbe got married, her parents were very close to Chazon Ish, of Avram Yishai Karlitz, a blessed memory. You're talking more than 70, 80 years ago. Less than that. About let's say 70 years ago. And someone mentioned, a boy, to marry her, and she found out that during intercession of learning that this boy helps his parents out in the store. Right? They had a certain store, whatever it was. And she said, no, I'm not interested. I want someone, and this is what she said, I want someone who's only going to sit and learn. I don't want to make food. I don't want to, whatever. I'll take care of everything. I want someone to sit and learn. And that's all I want them to do. So the Chazon Ish, the parents, her parents went to the Chazon Ish and they said, this girl's never going to get married. Right? At that time, for somebody to want somebody to sit and learn, I mean, it's almost unheard of. So the Chazon Ish said, don't worry. If this is what she wants, this is what she'll get. And who made the match between my Rebbe and his wife was the Chazon Ish, right? And shortly after he made the match, he died. Right? He passed away. So somebody like that who's willing to take the yoke of everything. She wrote my Rebbe's books. A lot of them, she wrote from, she took his notes where it's, weren't so easy to read. Talking about typewriter and all that. It was it wasn't so easy. She did everything. I know somebody told me when the synagogue was being built, in Jerusalem, she took care of everything. She asked them different things, whatever it was. But she was the one with the plans and and everyone handling it. She was the boss. She was the one that ran everything. His job was to sit and learn, and that's what he did. He sat and he learned, and and she was more than happy to do that, right? And say, oh, what a terrible thing. This woman had no life. You know what it is to own a Torah? This person is one of the Torah giants of the generation, right? And he owes it all to his wife, right? Because if a person's busy, trying to take care of his kids and making money and doing this and doing that, you don't have as much time to learn, right? You don't. You're too busy doing other things. She gave him all the time in the world. I'm not saying every woman can do this, but she gave them all the time in the world. Became what we become, right? Through her. It wasn't just himself, right? He had to have help over here, right? He raised, unbelievably righteous kids, family. It's, it's all her merit. She gets all the merit of his learning, right? You can say, some people say, what a terrible thing. She never got to see this. She never got to do it. Well, what's the most important thing sorry, I just gave it away. What's the most important thing is learning Torah, right? Talmud Torah Keneged Klum, nothing more important, right? But we have to value what it is. So now you have a whole generation, previous generation, that, girls are being educated to want to marry guys that are learning, for a certain amount of time, right? Because that's important, because we lost so many tens of thousands, millions, of Jews during the Holocaust. So, so a woman's willing to go all out, right? She's willing to get up early, send her kids to a babysitter, she goes to work, her husband's sitting and learning, but it doesn't mean doesn't help out. Doesn't mean doesn't do anything. No, I'm not taking the kids. You have to deal with it. I'm not picking them up. That's beneath me. That's absurd. Everybody has to help, right? You see, dishes aren't being done, whatever, you're home, you help, right? That's what you do. My kids are always astonished. They say, what did you do when we were little kids? I said, well, before I got any help, I helped. So what do you think did things around the house? What do you think, wash dishes? That was my job Saturday night. And your kids got older, I gave it to you. More than happy, to give that up. Plenty of things, that husbands do that they should do, because that shows respect for the wife as well. The burden is not all on her. Now, again, if some women say, don't worry about it, I'll do it, I'll take care of it, that's one thing. Not every woman can do everything, but a person has to pitch in, right? So the idea of being subservient is the way people look at it. And they'll say, wow, the husband really doesn't do anything. He sits at the table, Shabbos table or the festival table, Yom Tov table, sits there like a king. He says, yeah, and his wife sits there like a queen. You got people to help, okay, she'll get up, some of the kids will get up, whatever, but, she treats him like a king, he's certainly going to treat her like a queen, but that doesn't mean he does whatever he wants, right? So what about by non-Jews? Spend the last few minutes here speaking about non-Jews, because that's who we're pretty much talking to, right? So in a non-Jewish house, should also be balanced. I mean, obviously, husband's not going to be sitting and learning all day, right, in general, right? But again, she has to take care of his needs. He has to take care of her needs, right? And he has to help out. He has to show respect. Would we say he has to love her as much as himself? I don't know. I don't know if we'd have to go that far, right? But in order to have a healthy relationship in a marriage, which most marriages today end up in disaster, end up in divorce, right? It's a dying breed in a certain way, because most marriages end up in divorce. It's just it's what happens, because there are a lot of things that can happen that make it more difficult, make it harder. It's true. It doesn't matter, but it takes effort, right? It takes work, and neither person are perfect by any stretch. And if there are any issues, if there are money, most marriages, I would say, problems start when there are money problems, right? Usually when there are money problems. Could be other problems also, right? But it usually starts with that. So, if you have any other issues, money issues, let's say you want to have kids, there are fertility issues, and certainly for a woman, that's going to be a very hard thing. It could be, there could be illness, there could be, a million things. A million things that can put a strain on the marriage. But I can tell you one of the top ones is where parents get involved where they never should, right? You got to let kids figure it out for themselves. Sometimes it's very hard to sit on the side and watch. It is, right? But they're adults. They ask for advice. It's one thing. But it's not for us to get involved by non-Jews. Some of these things are exactly the same. I wouldn't say they're that much different. That you don't have family purity laws, you don't have other things, but in general, if you're not on the same path, you're not going in the same direction, you don't show mutual respect, then the marriage won't last. If either partner belittles the other, the spouse, the other spouse ad nauseum, that's a recipe for disaster, right? What do you call it? Psychological abuse, other things. A husband has to be willing to help. You're not, you can't say I want to get all the benefits of marriage and do nothing. This is the way I am. This is the way it is. I never have to work on myself. Now, a woman would have a choice. If she knows there are issues, and there could be there could be mental issues, other things. If there are certain things that will not change and will never change, let's say a person says, I'm never going for help, right? This thing I'll never change, doesn't necessarily mean she has to stay in such a marriage. If he's an alcoholic, he's a gambler, abuses other things, these are serious issues. These are definitely serious issues. It doesn't mean that a woman just has to sit back and say, okay, this is what he does. So I have to bear it. Why would that be? Right? Say, well, she's subservient. She got to do whatever he says. Again, in my Bible, it doesn't say that. There has to be mutual respect on both sides, right? The wife has to respect her husband. Sometimes the husband does certain things. She has a hard time finding respect, right? That's definitely an issue. The husband also, has to take his wife into consideration. Decisions that he's going to make, she has to give input. He can't just do whatever he wants, right? He has to take what she says into consideration. If he does something, and it comes out in the wrong way, he's going to get help for it. And he should. Why? One very simple reason. Because she's going to say, you didn't even tell me. You didn't even ask me. Right? He said, no, I wanted to spare you the difficulty because I know you would have gone to pieces if you would have known. That doesn't matter. But the fact, now I found out, now we have to go through this, etc. Like, what am I, chopped liver? I don't have to say in anything. Right? That's disrespect. You have to find common ground. Right? That's obviously why you're going to get married. Because there's common ground. Obviously, there has to be attraction. Right, which we've spoken about before. A person's never going to marry someone if they're not attracted. Right, doesn't mean you have to see skyrockets, but there has to be physical attraction. You have to see the person, definitely. But there has to be respect, right? So in this case, where we're saying that, oh, isn't it true? Isn't it true that that a woman, that a woman is subservient? And the obvious answer is no. And, we have an obligation, certainly as guys, as husbands, to treat our wives better than we would ourselves. Now, that is not always so easy, right? For a lot of different reasons, but we have an obligation to work hard. We have an obligation, at the end of the day, right? Let's call a spade, that if the woman is happy and the husband is making her happy, right, then everything is different in the house. The house is calm. Kids are happy. Kids are taken care of, right? Nice words go a long way. A gift here and there goes a long way. Going out every so often goes a long way, right? If they're in harmony together, everything's great. The house will function unbelievably. If there are issues, and everyone has issues at some level, the issues never, ever, ever, let me give some clear advice, never, ever, ever said in front of the kids, even if you disagree. Right? Because, first of all, the kids shouldn't hear it. And second of all, okay, you want to disagree, you're not going to put the other spouse down in front of your kids. Right? That is a kiss of death. That will destroy, no question. That will absolutely destroy, that strong bond. Because that the spouse feels humiliated. So, it doesn't mean you agree on everything, right? The Torah says, as we mentioned before, that the Torah says she's a helpmate. It doesn't mean she's a yes person. And says, I agree with this. I agree with whatever you say. That's great, right? Who wouldn't want that? But not everything we say is right. Women make a lot of sense that, they have a sixth sense men don't necessarily have, right? I've definitely seen it a number of times. So, that being the case, how could a man ever think his wife is subservient? And just because she may serve a meal, she may cook, she may, do other things, that does not mean she's a slave, right? We say in Spanish, she's an esclavo, right? That's not what it means, right? But it doesn't mean she has to do everything, right? In other words, if you see there's a burden, she's carrying things and you can't really carry everything, okay, you'll deal with it. You'll deal with it. No, she'll collapse. She's trying to carry 5 bags, take 1 of them, 2 of them. You got to lend a hand. There is certain delegation, but that's going to differ from family to family, right? How they're going to delegate what they're going to do and how they're going to raise their kids. So education of kids, I'll tell you this fundamental principle starts 20 years before your kids are born, when we don't really know that much about educating children, right? But you have to be in sync. And if there are disagreements, you have to discuss them. You can't do things without the other side. That'll be a recipe for disaster, because what that'll do is the spouse will say, you don't trust me, you don't tell me anything, you just do what you want, you do other things, and the spouse is right? Essentially the spouse is right, because, there has to be mutual respect. So and a lot of this is common courtesy. So even by non-Jews, right? You go out the door, you tell them where you're going. She doesn't have to nitpick and say, where are you going? You can say, I'm going out, taking out the trash, going here, going there. I'll be back, in 10 minutes. I'll be back in 15 minutes. But if you say you're going to be back in a certain time, be back in a certain time. If you say you're going to be back in an hour, if you're going to be delayed, call. So you're going to say, well, isn't that obvious? Yeah, it is. But not everyone has common sense. And a woman is going to worry, especially in today's day and age. You don't know what can happen. Anything can happen. This world's a powder keg, waiting to explode. So it's common courtesy. Non-Jews have to do things that are universal, right? Absolutely universal. So, it's going to, again, it'll differentiate between different houses. Different people do different things, right? And if a woman says, you don't have to worry about this, I'll take care of it, and she's happy with it, not just because she wants to do it for you, but she's happy doing it, that's one thing. If she's saying it, obviously you have to help out and, etc. But that goes a long way. There's appreciation. That's what keeps a marriage strong. There's appreciation on each side, not just because you have kids in common, right? Or, whatever, just because you've been married for so many years. The longer you're married, and kids start leaving the house, etc. The longer a person's married, obviously, the harder it is you have to work at it, right? Because now no one's around. Right, so now it's a different, definitely a different stage in life. But again, it's, the institute of marriage is a failing enterprise. Nonetheless, I'm not saying it's not fulfilling. I'm not saying it doesn't have necessarily ups and downs, but it's something like anything else. You have to work at it. And if you work at it and you put in the effort, you will get, right? You will benefit. And if a person, God forbid, treats his wife in this way, that he just thinks he's better, stronger, and he makes her subservient, that will be, that will not be a happy marriage. That marriage will not last, because she says, why do I have to be a slave over here? Right? And she's not. And the Torah states clear she's not. Right? And a husband has to take care of her even more than he would take care of himself, which seemingly is an impossibility. But that's our obligation. And when we do that, she's a happier person, the husband's a happier person, the house is a happier house. It's a whole different ballgame. Does it mean everything goes easy? No. Does it mean there are not arguments? No. It doesn't mean that. But even if there are, so you have to know how to discuss things, without putting the person down, and all that. And it's hard because, if a person's been married for so long, every nuance of your spouse. You know what they're going to say, how they're going to flare their nostrils, what they're thinking. It's hard. right? No one says it's, no one says not. But if a person's been married long enough, they've gone through difficult times, but their marriage is still going, then, it's a tremendous thing, but it takes work. It takes a tremendous effort. Is it worth it? Of course it's worth it. Is it easy? No one's going to say it's easy, but you have to treat, your spouse better than you would ever treat yourself. And that is the way to a happy marriage.
And that is the good summary to how we should treat each other, especially men treating the women, especially in a world where it seems like, that everybody teaches that men should be the big kahuna, and but so it's like, hey, I listen,
macho man, right?
I've been happily married now for almost 22 years, and I have my opinion, and I keep them to myself. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true.
I want your opinion. I'll beat it out.
No, we communicate really well. We become friends over the years because I respect her, and she knows I respect her, and likewise she respects me, and it really cultivates a really great friendship, and I wouldn't recommend anything else, to be honest with you. So
that's the way it stays strong. Otherwise, if there's conflict, then it's only, it's my way or the highway. You'll never get anywhere because it's all about pleasing yourself. But
right.
You have to remember, there's someone else there. Well, someone once told me, they said, yeah, when I got married, it was just like, I had so many roommates, in college and, different things. So it's just like having another roommate. So I asked his wife, I said, are you happily married? It's just like being another roommate. Come on.
That's funny. Well, guys, thank you all for tuning in. Hey, John Riggs, good to see you. Tally Joe, everybody who's tuned in, thank you all for doing so. Be sure to hit that like button if you don't mind before you get out of here. And be sure also, if you haven't done it yet, subscribe to the YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Be sure to select the all selection so you get every notification, because sometimes I'll put posts up, like a Facebook post, but it doesn't have a video, just comment stuff. So make sure you select that all. And we will see you guys again on the other side next week, Hashem willing. Rabbi, thank you again for your time, and everybody for tuning in.
Sounds like a plan. Always great to be here.
Wonderful. See you guys. Peace out, everybody.